Hello, my name is Lana Plummer, and today I'll be giving a presentation on perspectives in psychology. Psychological perspectives refers to the different approaches and theories to understand human behaviour and mental processes. There are 5 main, but not limited to, psychological perspectives. They are behaviourism, cognitive psychology, psychoanalysis, psychodynamic psychology, biological psychology, and social psychology. Today I'll be focusing on behaviourism and social psychology, describing both, evaluating key assumptions and theorists, analysing similarities and their application in contemporary issues. Firstly, behaviourism. Behaviourism was firstly established in 1913 in the publication of John B. Watson's classic paper, Psychology as the Behaviourist Views It. Behaviourism is the belief that behaviour is learned directly or indirectly. Behaviourism emphasises learning through associations and observable behaviours, downplaying internal thoughts and emotions. There are 2 main types of behaviour. Radical. Learning behaviours because of a stimuli or response, that behaviours can be influenced by looking into environmental factors and reinforcements that influenced it. And then social learning, the result of observation or copying a role model. The observer may learn a type of behaviour and remember it, but choose never to produce it. Strict behaviourists believe that all behaviours are a result of experience. Any person, regardless of their background, can be trained to act in a particular manner given the right conditioning. There are 2 types of conditioning within behaviourism. The first, classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is taking a neutral stimulus and pairing it with a naturally occurring stimulus. Over time, the neutral stimulus produces the same response as the natural occurring stimulus, even without the natural occurring stimulus presenting itself. An example of classical conditioning is Ivan Pavlov's study of his dogs in the 1980s. He paired the neutral stimulus of food with the natural occurring of his dogs salivating before being fed. He then added a bell every time food appeared, and over the time, dogs learned to salivate only to the sound of the bell without the food present. I'll speak more on this later. The second is operant conditioning, a method of learning that leads to changes in voluntary behaviour through reinforcement or punishment. Both can be negative or positive. Positive reinforcements or rewards make it more likely that behaviour will be repeated, whereas negative reinforcement or punishment means their behaviour is less likely to occur again. For example, in a busy shopping mall, you hold the door open for a stranger, wait patiently, and the person smiles and thanks you, leaving you feeling positive. Whereas if the person barged through without acknowledgement, appearing rude, the action may not be repeated again. The conditioning process has alone been used to understand many different types of behaviour, ranging from how people learn and develop languages. Key assumptions. Behaviourism is a theoretical perspective that emphasises learning and observable behaviours in understanding human and animal actions. The key assumptions were summarised by John B. Watson in 1913. Number 1. Behavioural psychology examines behaviours that can be observed and measured. Before behaviourism, it was argued that other psychology lacked measurable and observable data, discrediting it as non-legitimate science. Number 2, the use of lab-controlled experiments to gain measured results using observable learning, operant and classical conditioning techniques. Number 3 is that findings on animals can be extended to humans. Behaviourists believe that there is little difference between the learning that takes place in humans and that of other animals. Therefore, learning can be extended to humans. Number 4, our behaviours are primarily acquired through interactions with the environment. The behaviourist approach describes 2 types of learning processes. From our experiences within the environment that shape our behaviour, they are classical conditioning and the operant conditioning. Therefore, according to strict behaviourism, mental thought processes have no place in psychology, nor do the principles of inheritance fully explain our behaviour. The strength in behaviourism lies in its credibility within lab-controlled experiments. There is little space for bias outcomes. The findings of classical and operant conditioning have been applied to psychology to form treatments for overcoming phobias. Behaviourism led to many other crucial discoveries within psychology. Behaviourism does have its limitations. Behaviourism do not take into account and consider human cognitive thought process or biological issues such as memory, problem solving, OCD or biological factors. It can be argued that behaviourist approach is deterministic or reductionist and not looking at the wider picture. Now, looking at the work of some key theorists. Going back to Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov discovered classical conditioning in the 1980s by accident while researching dogs' digestive system. Ivan Pavlov noticed that his dog's automatic response was to salivate at the sight of food, but over time they would salivate to the sound of his assistant's footsteps. while the food was being prepared. This led to the experiment of Pavlov's dogs. Pavlov paired a neutral stimulus, the sound of the bell, with an unconditioned stimulus, the food that caused the dogs to salivate. Initially, the sound of the bell did not affect the dog's behaviour. Over time, the sound of the bell was paired with the presentation of food. The dogs learned to associate the bell with the food and eventually would salivate at just the sound of a bell, causing a conditioned response. Pavlov's dogs learned to respond to a previous neutral stimulus, the bell, because it was associated with something positive, the food. Although the experiment has led to important discoveries in behaviourism, there are limitations with the use of animals not fully reflecting the complexity of human behaviour. Pavlov's work laid the foundation for behaviourism. The principles of classic conditioning have been used to explain a wide range of behaviours and treat several mental health disorders, including anxiety, depression, OCD, panic attacks, phobias, and substance misuse disorders. Another experiment was the Little Albert. The Little Albert experiment was a highly controversial psychology experiment conducted in 1920 by John B. Watson and Rosalia Rayner at the Johns Hopkins University. Inspired by Pavlov's dogs and classical conditioning, the pair set out to discover if it applied to humans. In 1919 to 1920, the Little Albert experiment provided evidence for classical conditioning responses in infants by inducing a phobia. Little Albert was shown several stimuli that he showed no fear response. It was reported that he was only naturally afraid of loud noises. A white rat was chosen for the experiment. When Albert was originally shown the white rat, he showed no fear at all and tried to pet and stroke the rat. The rat was then paired with loud noises every time it was showed to cause Albert to burst into tears. Over time, Albert learned to associate the rat with loud bangs. Even without the bangs and only the white rat, Alfred would rapidly try to crawl away and began to cry. The phobia had developed. The study is often cited as evidence that phobia can develop through classical conditioning, but it does have many criticisms. One is the unethical use of a 9-month-old infant exposed to fear and distress. The limitation of the experiment only using one human subject, meaning the results were individual findings and could not be generalised. It was also questioned that the age of Albert by the end of the experiment could be a factor in the results. Albert was 12 months towards the end of the research, an age where infants start to naturally develop fear responses. Despite its limitations, the Little Albert experiment remains a significant milestone in the field of psychology. Next is the Skinner's box. Beres Frederick Skinner, commonly known as B.F. Skinner, the father of operant conditioning. Skinner believed that classical conditioning was too simplistic to explain complete human behaviour. He believed looking into the causes and actions and its consequences, leading to operant conditioning. Skinner conducted experiments on animals such as rats and pigeons in what he called the Skinner's box. Inspired by Edward Thorndike's research on law and effect, he began to explore how behaviour is shaped by consequences. The box is a controlled, small environment that isolates the animal, equipped with lever and other devices. The animal is observed learning a new behaviour, such as pressing the lever that can lead to positive reinforcement, such as the delivery of food, or removal of punishment, such as electric shocks. Skinner believed that psychology should be studied through a more objective lens that required hard evidence, observation, and experimentation. His work has received criticism for being too reliant on animal research, which does not consider the complexity of human behaviours, dismissing any biological factors. His theories continue to impact areas such as education, psychotherapy, early childhood learning, dog training, and therapy. Now moving on to social psychology. Social psychology is the study of human behaviour, thoughts, feelings, and interaction based on influences of actual, imagined, or an implied presence of others. Social psychologists in this field believe that all behaviours take place in a social context. Humans feel the need to be accepted and comply to social norms of society, and social influence is a major factor within psychology. Social psychology covers a wide range of topics, including group behaviour, social perception, leadership, conformity, aggression, prejudice. The key assumptions. Social psychology focuses on interactions with others and how this affects our individual behaviours and emotions. There are several key assumptions. One of the assumptions is that other people and the environment influence our behaviour and thought process. Social psychologists focus on things that shape people's lives, such as interactions with others, cultural expectations, environmental cues, and social norms within society. Another is all human behaviour occurs in a social context. Even in the absence of others, meaning behaviours are linked to social content. Even when alone, self-reflecting, this is impacted by others, social expectations and personal experiences within our environment and others. The third is that relationships with others influence our behaviour and thought process. Relationships can shape and change human behaviour positively or negatively. Social psychology explores how attitudes and thoughts can change things due to things like peer pressure, different social situations, and how we perceive our peers' behaviour. The strength of social psychology lies in its ability to challenge real-world social problems with rigorous hypothesis, testing, looking into cause and effect, and challenging things such as prejudice, discrimination, and stereotyping. It promotes cross-cultural understanding with possible solutions and actions for change. Social psychology has its limitations, the main one being it often overlooks differences with individuals, focusing more on general behaviours, dismissing that not everybody conforms, obeys, or reacts in the same way. Lab-controlled experiments have been criticised for not always applying to real-world situations due to real life's ever-changing factors, and that cues from literature and lab researchers can lead to a biased outcome. The work of key theories in psychology. Two key theorists in social psychology are Henri Tejfel and John Turner. In the 1970s, they developed the social identity theory. This theory investigates the way individuals derive a portion of their self-concept, pride, and self-esteem from the social groups they belong to. The theory looks to explain the mind processes and social conditions underlying groups' behaviours, especially those related to prejudice, bias, and discrimination. According to their theory, there are several cognitive stages involved. The first, social categorization. People tend to classify themselves and others into various social groups based on several attributes, things like race, gender, nationality, or religion. Social categories are used to simplify the social environment, like black, white, bus driver, and teachers. This can lead to stereotyping and making assumptions based on somebody's category. Social identification. People begin to learn more about themselves when placed in a group or categories and adopt the characteristics and values and social norms within their groups. Self-esteem will become bound up with group membership. Next, social comparison. After categorizing and identifying a group, people begin to compare their groups with others. The comparison is often favoured to one's group. Establishing rivalries with other groups can lead to prejudice and being forced to maintain self-esteem and identity of one's own group. In-groups and out-groups. The in-group refers to the group an individual identifies as, and the out-group refers to the other groups within which they do not identify with. It was found that individuals perceive their group in a more positive light, while seeing the other groups neutrally or negatively to enhance self-image. A positive distinctiveness. The need for positive self-esteem will motivate an in-group to perceive as positively different or distinct from other similar groups. This has led to extreme prejudice between cultures, which may result in racism. Henri Tejfel developed the minimal group paradigm, an experiment developed to investigate the minimal conditions required for discrimination to occur. The experiment divided people into groups and separated them with minimal differences with little meaning. Then they asked the group to distribute resources or rewards to everybody. They found that the person always gave better resources or rewards to their own in-group. This proved that no matter how small the differences, a person will almost always favour the group they have been identified with. This provided the right set of conditions, in-group preference can lead to out-groups, derogation, and form prejudice. The theory has revolutionised social psychology. The minimal group paradigm remains a widely used tool today, influence research into prejudice, stereotyping, social influence, and intergroup conflict. The theory does have its limitations in that it downplays other influences like cultural norms, individual personalities, and personal experiences in shaping individuals' identities and interactions. Critics argue that it focuses more on in-group favouritism more than out-group negativity, and oversimplifies the complex relationship between personal and collective identities. Now, a comparison of both behaviourism and social. Behaviourism and social psychology have many similarities and differences. Behaviourism lies on the side of hard determinism, believing human behaviour is primarily determined by the external environment. It suggests that individuals do not have free will, that actions are triggered by physical stimuli, social interactions, and their reinforcements. Whereas social psychology leans on soft determinism, believing that a person's own free will plays a role in their choices alongside environmental and social influences. The similarities. They both take an empirical approach, focusing on observable behaviour under lab-controlled experiments such as the Skinner's box in behaviourism and Bandura's Boo-Boo doll experiment in social psychology. Both focus on observable behaviour rather than mental processes or biological factors. Both consider the environment, influence, and known as the nurture approach, such as the stimuli around us, cultures, and social norms. Both behaviourism and social psychology examine behaviours from different angles, but both emphasise external influences, though social psychology does consider both nature and nurture. Now I'll speak about their application in contemporary issues. Today, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem each year, and in England, 1 in 6 people experience common mental health problems such as anxiety, stress, and depression. Psychology and mental health are strongly linked because the more science of the mind we understand, the better we can treat mental health problems and well-being issues. An example is cognitive and behavioural therapy. Developed by Aaron Beck in the 1960s, then further developed in the 1980s to combine cognitive and behavioural psychology by reconstructing unhealthy beliefs with behavioural techniques. CBT aims to challenge and change negative thoughts and behaviours into manageable, positive challenges by setting goals in a highly constructive manner and working closely with a trained therapist over 5 to 20 sessions. CBT can be applied to various mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, eating disorders, PTSD, and substance misuse. The advantages of CBT. It is a relatively short process when compared with others. It can be paired with medication. CBT is highly structured and therefore well tried and tested. CBT can be used within a group setting. Its teachings can be consistently used and revisited at any stage in life because CBT teaches coping strategies that can be used in multiple situations. The disadvantages is that it focuses on the present rather than the past, and for some people, they can't move past this without revisiting the past. Group settings are not always effective and takes away the individual focus that can limit its effectiveness. CBT has a high dropout rate, with many people not completing the full course. This could be due to various aspects, such as difficulty in exploring a person's own anxieties, or CBT not being intensive enough for some. It is not a quick fix. Commitment is required even after the sessions are finished to continue to use the techniques on your own. But if used correctly to treat the appropriate person and issue, CBT can help an individual understand their feelings more and in the long run could lead to an improvement in quality of life. One of the key theories within behaviourism is observable learning. Observable learning plays a key role in today's society to improve inclusion, reduce discrimination and enforce positive role models. Recognition and rewards are often tools used in work settings, schools and social clubs. This stems from operant conditioning. When a person receives positive recognition or rewards for positive behaviours, they are more likely to feel motivated and valued and continue positive behaviours that can also inspire others around them. However, if rewards and recognitions are not distributed fairly or with transparency, this can lead to conflict or mistrust. Now, the study of social psychology has assisted with challenging and shaping and understanding the effects of bias, discrimination, prejudice and diversity to achieve a more informed and equal society today. One way is through implicit bias training, which is a process of exploring one's personal, unconscious bias to reduce its impact. The term implicit bias was first coined in 1995 by psychologists Mahzarin Bhanji and Anthony Greenwald, who argued that social behaviour is largely influenced by unconsciousness associations and judgments. Implicit bias can be a major effect on the criminal justice system, workplaces, school settings and healthcare. Individual biases are developed through personal experiences, upbringings and backgrounds. People may never be aware of their bias unless put to the test. The Implicit Association Test, AIT, has provided an online test for the general public to assess their implicit bias. Implicit bias training requires long-term commitment and can be difficult to implement correctly, but overall has assisted in achieving a more equal society. Psychology continues to shape our understanding of human behaviour and contributes to solving social challenges, and is therefore more relevant today more than ever. Thank you very much for listening.